1965 brought us musical milestones that changed rock and soul forever. Let's dive into these classics that defined a generation. Did 1965 give us a more influential rock song than I Can't Get No Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones? Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were sharing a Florida hotel room during their third American tour when Richards woke up in the middle of the night, played a guitar riff into a tape recorder, mumbled, "I can't get no satisfaction," and fell back asleep. The next morning, he had no memory of recording it. That tape contained the guitar hook that would become the backbone of their first #1 hit in America, and the song that cemented their rebellious image. The fuzzy guitar sound Richard created was meant to be temporary. He intended to replace it with a horn section. Thankfully, the band overruled him, keeping the distortion that became rock's definitive sound for decades. The song's lyrics about commercial exploitation and sexual frustration were considered so controversial that many radio stations initially banned it, which only increased its popularity. Today, Jagger and Richards continue touring in their 80s, with Satisfaction still the song that brings crowds to their feet. The band's longevity has surpassed all expectations, outlasting most of their critics. The song's iconic guitar riff came from the first ever commercial use of a Gibson fuzzbox, which Richards used to mimic the sound of a saxophone. When the band appeared on Shindig to perform the song, network censors demanded they change the line, "trying to make some girl," to "trying to make some time." The Stones agreed, then sang the original lyrics anyway, creating the first of many censorship battles that would follow them throughout their career. Wooly Bully by Sam, the Sham, and the Pharaohs stormed the charts in 1965, but the band's journey began years earlier, when Domingo "Sam" Zamudio formed the group in Texas. Sam, a former meat cutter with Mexican-American roots, created a stage persona with turbans and capes that many found bizarre but impossible to ignore. The band's name came from Sam's Pharaoh costumes, and some radio stations initially refused to play their music, claiming the rhythms were too suggestive for mainstream audiences. Though Wooly Bully became the biggest selling record of 1965 without ever hitting #1 on the charts, many don't realize it was recorded in a single take. The broken English and seemingly nonsensical lyrics were completely unplanned. Sam was simply ad-libbing and having fun. Despite Capitol Records' concerns about the song's commercial viability, it went on to sell over 3 million copies. Today, Sam Zamudio is in his 80s and occasionally performs at oldie shows, though he's traded his turban for a cowboy hat and spent time as a church counselor. Few people know that Wooly Bully was actually a song about Sam's cat. The real Wooly Bully was a massive tomcat named after the children's story, The Wooly Bully, and Sam would tease him by saying, "Watch it now, watch it." The phrase made its way into the song, becoming one of rock's most recognizable intros. The band couldn't even play the song the same way twice, making the single recording they managed to get a true musical lightning-in-a-bottle moment. The Four Tops gave us "I Can't Help Myself," Sugar Pie Honey Bunch in 1965. But this Detroit quartet had been performing together since 1953 when they were high school students. What makes them remarkable is that, unlike most Motown groups, the Four Tops maintained their original lineup for over 4 decades, a stability almost unheard of in the music industry. Berry Gordy originally viewed them as a jazz act, not R&B singers, and kept them recording jazz standards for years, while other Motown acts topped the charts. When Holland Dozier Holland finally wrote "I Can't Help Myself" for the group, it shot to #1 and stayed there, establishing the Four Tops as soul powerhouses. Lead singer Levi Stubbs was repeatedly offered solo contracts, but refused them all, stating, "I'm a Four Top." This loyalty kept the group together until death finally separated them. Today, only one original member, Abdul Duke Fakir, remains alive and continues to perform with newer members. The song remains one of Motown's most covered hits, with versions in numerous languages worldwide. If you remember these incredible songs from 1965, I want to hear your stories. What memories do these tracks bring back? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this video with friends who appreciate real music from the era that changed everything. The Righteous Brothers weren't actually brothers, and they started as part of a group called the Pharaohs before branching off as a duo. Bill Medley and Bobby Hatfield's deep, soulful sound was so distinctively different from other white artists that African-American listeners were shocked to discover they weren't black, leading to radio DJs calling their music "Righteous Brothers." The name stuck, but their blue-eyed soul sound created controversy, with some critics accusing them of appropriating black music styles for commercial gain. "You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' became their signature hit in 1965, though producer Phil Spector originally didn't want to release it, believing the song's unusual length, nearly 4 minutes, would prevent radio airplay. He deliberately printed the wrong running time, 3:05, on early copies to fool DJs into playing it. The strategy worked, and the song became the most played song on American radio in the 20th century. Hatfield passed away in 2003, but Medley continues performing this song, always closing his shows with their legendary hit. Just a note, guys, the script had him dying in 2023, but Bill Medley's still alive. Petula Clark was already a massive star in Europe before Downtown crossed the Atlantic and topped American charts in early 1965. What many Americans didn't know was that Clark had been performing since age 7 during World War II, entertaining troops as Britain endured German bombing raids. Her transition from child star to adult performer was rocky, with British media criticizing everything from her marriage to a Frenchman to her attempts to update her sound. She persevered despite critics claiming she was too old at 32 to compete with younger British invasion acts. The success of Downtown made Clark the first British female artist to hit #1 in America during the British invasion, proving her critics wrong. Written and produced by Tony Hatch, the song was inspired by his first visit to New York City. Clark initially disliked the song, but recorded it as a favor to Hatch. Now in her 90s, she continues to perform occasionally, having recorded over 1,000 songs in multiple languages throughout her 7-decade career. Her staying power is remarkable. She's performed for Queen Elizabeth II, Winston Churchill, and at the White House. When Clark appeared on a 1968 TV special with Harry Belafonte, she touched his arm during a duet, causing the sponsor, Chrysler, to demand the scene be reshot due to concerns about a white woman touching a black man on national television. Clark and her husband, who produced the special, refused and threatened to destroy the entire tape. Chrysler backed down, and the moment became an early victory against segregation in television. This principled stand happened just weeks after Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, making it all the more significant. Friends, it's time to share. Comment below with your favorite memories, whether it was waiting in line for albums or screaming at concerts. If this video brings back the magic of 1965, smash that like button, subscribe for more music history, and share with fellow fans of the greatest era in rock and roll. Help by the Beatles showed a band in transition during 1965, moving from their early pop sound toward more complex music. What fans didn't realize was that John Lennon was experiencing a personal crisis that inspired the song's lyrics. Behind that upbeat tempo lay Lennon's genuine cry for help as he struggled with fame, his failing marriage, and questions about his identity. He later admitted he was fat and depressed during this period and resented that the record company sped up the recording, making his plea for help sound more like a conventional pop song. The song topped charts worldwide during the band's most grueling year. They were filming their second movie, recording the Help album, and maintaining a tour schedule that had them performing in stadiums rather than smaller venues. This pace contributed to their decision to stop touring the following year. Of course, the band broke up in 1970, but all 4 members enjoyed successful solo careers of varying degrees. Today, Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr continue performing Beatles classics alongside their solo material, with McCartney headlining major festivals well into his 80s. Elvis Presley's Crying in the Chapel might have topped charts in 1965, but the King actually recorded it in 1960, only to have it shelved by RCA Records for 5 years. This delay occurred because Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, was engaged in a publishing dispute with the Aberbach brothers, who owned the rights to the song. Parker, notorious for his control over Elvis's career, refused to let his star record songs where he couldn't secure publishing percentages. This business conflict kept a potential hit locked away for half a decade. When Crying in the Chapel was finally released in 1965, Elvis was deep into his movie career, churning out forgettable films with equally forgettable soundtracks. The song's success reminded fans of his artistic potential beyond Hollywood, becoming his first gospel hit and his first top 10 single in nearly 4 years. Though Elvis passed away in 1977, his legacy continues through reissues, documentaries, and an estate that has sometimes controversially licensed his image and music. The song remains significant as evidence of Presley's spiritual side and vocal abilities beyond rock and roll. The Temptations brought My Girl to life in 1965.
She was my girl.
Though few realize it was the first song Smokey Robinson produced for a male group at Motown. He wrote it specifically for David Ruffin to showcase his distinctive voice, marking Ruffin's debut as lead vocalist for the group. Before this, Ruffin was a background singer, but Robinson heard something special in his voice that he believed deserved the spotlight. This decision created tension within the group, as member Eddie Kendricks had previously handled most of the lead vocals and felt sidelined. The song's success transformed Ruffin into the group's star, a status that eventually led to his downfall. His growing ego and drug problems caused him to miss performances, leading Motown to fire him in 1968. The group continued through numerous lineup changes over the decades, though none of the original members survive today. Despite personal tragedies and conflicts, their musical legacy remains untouchable, with My Girl serving as their signature song. It's been featured in countless films, commercials, and covers, transcending generations and musical tastes. 1965 gave us songs that still resonate today, creating the soundtrack for a generation that witnessed cultural revolution. From the raw energy of the Stones to the soulful depth of the Temptations, these tracks didn't just entertain, they changed music forever. If these songs bring back memories of your glory days, I want to hear about it. Share your stories in the comments and subscribe for more trips down memory lane, and ring that bell so you don't miss our next musical journey through the years that shaped us all.